Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing Asia podcast. I am your host, Sheila Berman. We will be talking about how to become an effective global B2B marketer. So, joining me today is someone who has a very interesting career path. She is Garima Mamgain, the Global Segment Marketing Manager for Auto Electrification at 3M. Welcome, Garima, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here, Sheila, and I really look forward to our conversation today.
Now, I mentioned earlier that you have a very interesting career path, and I would like to touch on your career journey. You didn't study marketing, I believe, and in fact, did not start your career in marketing. So, could you tell us a little bit more of your career journey and how have these non-marketing experiences helped you to reach where you are at today?
Awesome. So, Sheila, I think you're right to say that my career path has definitely not been linear in that sense, and it's interesting. I find it interesting. And whichever marketer I generally tend to speak to, most of them have had interesting paths to where they are right now. So, I think that's the beauty of being in marketing, that you can take any different path and you could end up doing something very different. For me, Sheila, I started off as an engineer. So, I'm an electronics engineer way back when in
Wow.
another age. That's where I started. And right out of my engineering, I realized that I love coding.
Mhm.
And I joined at that point in time a software development firm in India. And I coded the first NEF, so electronic fund transfer mechanism. I coded that back in the days when COBOL was a thing. So I pretty much coded that at that point in time. And at that time, you would typically tend to use checks, etc. So I optimized the two electronic fund transfer systems that I use to date in India. So every time I see something around NEFT or RTGS, I feel very proud because I pretty much wrote the first code for those softwares in India. So I think interesting times, it also taught me, I feel like coding is a lot more than the language that you learn. It teaches you a lot about problem solving. It teaches you how to creatively look for a solution which is effective, efficient, and especially in India with the volumes that we have, you have to be a very creative code writer. So it was an interesting time. And after which I went on to do my MBA. And that's where I actually technically learned marketing. So I have a couple of years of marketing education background as well. So I did my MBA. And after my MBA, I joined Nokia right from campus when Nokia used to be the handphone maker globally. And at Nokia, the person who hired me, the leader at that time, was very clear that we all needed to go do sales and develop an empathy for our customers before we enter the world of marketing. So I did rural sales. And I think for me, that was a super learning experience because in your MBA, you're very polished, you're very suave. You don't know who your real customers are. So I stood in shops and I sold mobile phones. And that helped me develop a lot of understanding of how tough it is for a salesperson to be standing there and to be selling a mobile phone. And sometimes it's just humiliating, it's tiring. I learned all of that. And I also then did I went from shop to take orders. It was frustrating right out of my MBA, but in the hindsight, I felt like I got rid of all my jargons really quickly because I did that sales role for a while, both in rural and then I handled sales for New Delhi. And from there on, I started off pretty much in my marketing path. I went on to do I joined Volkswagen Group and where I did marketing for Audi. And I handled both the brand and also the retail. So there is a demand generation and then there is a lead generation aspect to it. And I handled both of them for Audi in India. And then I got a wonderful opportunity within Volkswagen to be one of the 6 employees for Porsche in India. And Porsche is an iconic brand, but very few people knew about it at that point in time in India. And as a marketer, there is nothing better than the ability to build an iconic brand. And I got that opportunity with Porsche. So I did digital, I did PR, I did CRM because there were only so many of us. And that gave me the opportunity to get diverse experiences across various functions in marketing and outside of marketing. And from there, I moved on to do a regional role with Caterpillar. And I came to Singapore, and Caterpillar had this unique problem, or rather problem statement around how do we attract retail customers, the smaller customers? How do we get them to come to us and how can we work with them profitably? Obviously, that has to be a marketing led acquisition path. And I helped drive that foundational transformation at Caterpillar for Asia Pacific. And then I joined 3M, which is where I am right now. So largely my experiences have been around demand generation, campaign management, influencer marketing, content marketing, email. Anything you say, I feel like I'm more a generalist now when it comes to marketing. Tell me your problem and I'll tell you the tools you need to get there. So I think most of us have learned and evolved in that direction. So I do that now. In my current role, like you mentioned, I lead the global segment marketing for automotive electrification. And it's a new role, a different way to look at the automotive industry. And we all know that we are all headed towards an electric future. And how can marketing catalyze that solution? How can we get there faster is something that I'm solving towards right now. So super excited. It's a new role. I'm learning every day, and which is what keeps me going.
So fascinating, Garima. I'm just listening to you, and I actually have a lot more questions, but I'll stick to what our topic is today. And later on, maybe if we have time, we can touch on the other aspects of that. So, as a global B2B marketer right now, and considering that you've started, the way I look at it, you've started and learned and actually experienced end to end from both marketing all the way to sales, or maybe it's the reverse. You learn more about sales and then you work towards marketing, which I think, like I said, it encompasses all the different aspects of both marketing and sales. Now, looking at your history and all of your experiences, do you think, in terms of skills, we're talking about skills now, do you think there are differences in skills required for marketers at a country level versus somebody who is managing a regional portfolio versus to somebody who is now at your level at a global portfolio? Do you think there are large differences in the skills required?
Yeah. Sheila, I definitely feel there are huge differences. And I think that's the fun of it. You keep learning. I think that's the fun of moving from a country role to a regional role to a global role. So let me walk you through maybe the kind of skills, the technical and probably the non-technical skills, which are equally important for us as marketers. When I started off in the country team, I felt like that was the learning ground for me where I got my hands dirty. So I was setting up campaigns. We were seeing what is working, what is not. So I feel like those technical skills that you need, for me, it was technical digital marketing skill. And I really invested a lot of time learning those when I was in the country team. That was important to succeed as a country marketer. And the second skill you need as a country marketer is the ability to have deep insights. So you should understand the customer the best because as a country marketer, you have that opportunity a lot more to go meet your customers. And largely the global team and even the regional team depends on a country marketer to understand that customer very intimately. So I think for me, those two skills technically were very important. And in terms of non-technical skill, there are a couple, but there's this one specific one which I feel is a game changer, which is the agility. The trends come and go. You have to jump on certain trends. Some trends you stay out of. And it's only a country marketer whose ears are close to the ground who can actually execute on those. So I feel like that operational agility and not just on trends, even if you're running a campaign, it's not working well, how quickly can you pivot? What else can you do? I feel like that agility really helps you stand out. And that's a non-technical skill that you must have if you are a country marketer. And the second non-technical skill, and I think we have spoken about this in the past as well, is the ecosystem view. And as a marketer, you have to work with influencers, you need to work with creative agencies, there are e-commerce partners, and these relationships are best maintained by a country marketer. So it is a country marketer's non-technical skills around maintaining these relationships with the ecosystem partners, which make a difference. So I feel that those are the skills that when you start off as a country marketer, you should probably work on. And as you move towards regional roles, so when I moved to Caterpillar, I felt like I was drowning in data. And as a region, you can imagine Southeast Asia or even Asia Pacific is a crazy region to have one strategy for. Just for an example, I was just reading this report day before yesterday, so these numbers are fresh in my head right now. There is this one slide in that report which says how many hours in a day do people in certain countries, how much do they connect to the internet? And the map sort of places, that chart places countries by the number of hours an average person spends per day connected to the internet. So on the extreme left was Philippines. So an average person in Philippines spends 8 hours, 53 odd minutes connected to the internet, right? And the extreme right was Japan, where a person in Japan spends 3 hours, 56 minutes connected to the internet, right? So I know this pretty clearly because I
You
just read
really
it.
know your numbers.
And just imagine that this is a slide, and there's Philippines and there's Japan, two extremes. And both of those extremes exist in Asia Pacific. So it's really difficult when you take up a regional role to think of what is your Asia Pacific strategy because there's so much diversity. And this is my experience. But I'm sure if you speak to an EMEA regional manager or a person who handles USAT, LATAM, the story is the same. As you move into regional roles, you will start drowning in data. And one of the first things that I had to do was learn how to use Power BI. And I just spent some time to even, and the coder in me helped because the DAX programming becomes, but you don't have to do that. You just need to learn enough to be able to skim through the data and be able to understand. So I feel like that data analytics becomes super important as a technical skill. And the second technical skill that becomes important is budgeting. Now, suddenly, when you're sitting in a regional role, you are looking at various product portfolios, different gross margins. When you put in a dollar, what is the return on investment across products, across countries? And as a business owner, you have to decide how do I maximize that return, not just on investment, but also in gross margins uh, across the short term, mid term, and the long term. So I think that budgeting bit, you shouldn't be afraid of numbers because that really comes in when you do regional marketing. And the third technical skill that I really needed to relearn was integrated marketing communications. So our customers, they want a seamless experience across channels, across countries. And you need to be able to appreciate, I had to learn to appreciate integrated marketing communications importance when I moved into a regional role. And I know this sounds a lot, but it takes years. And the good thing is you can keep learning. So there's always a path to that. In terms of non-technical skills, I felt like there was a time when I was doing projects in Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, and Australia. And there are different cultural contexts in all of these countries. So you might want to achieve the same result, but the path to getting to that result and the timelines to those results differ dramatically depending on the cultural context. So the cultural competency or the context understanding becomes very important when you move into regional roles. And the final one really, which I think is a non-negotiable, is the number of people you need to work with who you don't have a dotted line or a direct line reporting to becomes extremely high suddenly. So you have to learn how to influence and negotiate. And
There's a lot of
trial by fire.
cultural collaboration required.
Yes.
Yes.
There is, right? So there is this trial by fire. You have to learn negotiation if you haven't already. So that I think is something that you pick up in the regional role. And I've recently moved into the global role. So to be honest, I'm still learning how to be at top of this. But some of the nuances or differences I see now are I need to be aware not just of the company data, but also of the industry macros. So where's the industry headed? And what is the vision? Where are we going to be 5 years from now? Where are the areas of growth? Where can we invest? And I feel like understanding those macroeconomic situations or that data type of data now becomes super important. And of course, the number of stakeholders are increasing. So there is this entire communication aspect to it. Most important one, and you mentioned it when you started off, is data-driven decision making. So everything that needs to be done now, there needs to be data to support that initiative. Because as you move into global roles, you have to look at how can I further understand my customer? How do I segment it? There's no one size that fits all. And really, I think that data-driven decision making it gets more complicated and more important as you move into these global roles. So long answer, Sheila, but I just want to lay down the various skills that I can remember as a marketer that we need to have. And I'm sure that there are lots more. So
yes, I can already imagine you just trying to sift through everything, data reports, and then going towards what you mentioned about the nuances of working with different cultures. And I would expect that would probably be one of the challenges now that you're probably experiencing managing a global portfolio. So aside from understanding the cultural nuances, and like you said, also trying to work with people who do not report to you, what do you think are the other, or what are you experiencing now in terms of overall in a global way that you're managing? What are the challenges that you have been facing? And how have you been managing to overcome them, or how are you working through them?
Yeah, I think if you ask a marketer for challenges, it can be a never ending conversation. But and for the sake of this conversation, let me keep it brief. I think one of the biggest challenges I face now is and it's a challenge and it's the beauty of marketing, which is the ecosystem diversity that we have across the globe. For example, China has its own ecosystem with WeChat and Douyin, and they have a separate, China really has its own set of search engines, etc. And then Korea has Naver, which is Redfin, Kakao. And then India doesn't have TikTok, but the rest of the world has TikTok. USAC doesn't use much of WhatsApp, but the rest of the world uses WhatsApp. So it's an interesting space to be. What it also does as a marketer is it makes making content at scale a little bit challenging. So I think that's one challenge that we have to deal with at all points in time. Who are these campaigns for? How can we repurpose that content? Because content creation is super expensive and we want to make sure we do a good job of distribution. So that I think is a big challenge. And the other challenge you always have is how well is your brand known in the market? So there is a saturation and there is a penetration of your brand. When I started off with Posha in India, we used to get campaigns from Germany. And in Germany, Posha is already a well established brand. And in India, we're still getting people to pronounce it correctly, the name correctly. So we're still building the fan base for that brand. And when you have the same communication running, so it does create a bit of a confusion in our customers' mind. And being able to solve that, I think at a global level gets a bit difficult. And the third one, which I think I have accused the global marketeers of, and now on the other side now, which is how do you maintain the brand while giving space for localization? And I feel like every dollar that we are spending for marketing, we need to focus on our differentiated brand assets, right? So there is a box that we need to define as a brand owner and then be able to innovate in that box. So how tight is that box? And I feel like that is always a challenge and a balance that we are finding at all times. And the final one that I would say, I would not bore you with my sad stories, really.
Exactly. Actually, I'm fascinated by this, but yes, please do continue.
Yeah, so I think that the last one is probably the competition set changes dramatically. So there will be some global competitors that will be common across all countries. And then every country will have its own local set of competition. And the agility of that competitor, the way of working, the go to market, that changes. And that makes a lot of difference to how effective our marketing campaigns can be. So you should be able to, and for some campaigns, you look at only the global players, but then you're missing out on a whole set of local players that come into picture. So I think that competitive set changes dramatically across the globe. And yeah, one extra challenge for marketers to deal with.
So many challenges, right? And
Yes.
those are just like not even everything.
Yes, it is.
So if somebody then asks you, okay, Garima, I really want to do this and I need to understand. So how can I achieve my KPI? I'm just listening to you now and I'm going, oh my God, is it even possible to achieve your KPIs? So what would you say about that?
Sheila, that's a trick question. You have the problems and are you asking me the solution? But yeah, I feel like if it was so clear and so obvious, we would have solved it by now. Clearly, we're all solving that problem because the answers to it are sometimes non-obvious. And I think a few things that typically tend to work for me, and I think for a lot of other marketers that I speak to. One is we need to appreciate that we are not alone. The entire organization is working towards serving customers better. Everyone has a customer in mind. For regulatory compliance challenges, etc., I always depend on, and even product challenges, I always depend on the experts. So I think that is something that all marketers should definitely develop that network within their organizations to know who can help them at any given point in time. I think that's one. Second is over communicate. And I think it's heartbreaking sometimes that you reach out to a sales person, especially in B2B segment, that happens a lot. And they'll say, I don't know what marketing does. Sometimes, look, you have, right? And sometimes it's heartbreaking. And I feel like the best way to do that is really to over communicate. So I try and find every opportunity to speak about what marketing delivers. It helps you get a customer to say yes faster. It helps you remain top of mind with your customers. So I make sure that depending on who's in the room, I am over communicating the value of marketing. So I take every opportunity and some more to do that. And I think the third thing I would say is develop a feedback loop. So every once a week, I just sit down and look at the SFDC and find a random opportunity that's going on or close and just reach out to the salesperson to ask, how did you get to it? How long did it take you? What could have made it easier? And that's just one feedback loop. as marketers, we have many other feedback loops. We have after sales, we have, sometimes portfolio leaders, product leaders, sometimes actually just meeting customers and being a fly on the wall while they do their stuff in events or otherwise, I think helps. So create as many feedback loops as possible. And the final one that I would say is run experiments. This goes back to my engineering and also true for marketing. Keep running small pilot experiments, find the right partners to help you do that. And once you're able to see results from those experiments, then use those results to scale it further. So I think that sometimes helps a lot and helps. I've often, rarely have I seen a big transformation or a big marketing campaign start as a big bang. Like there was nothing today and tomorrow, suddenly we are all doing it. Largely, I feel when you run pilots, you really increase the chances of success for a marketing organization.
And something that I really want to touch on that you have demonstrated based on your example is the need to actually cultivate that sense of empathy and working with other people. Because you mentioned that earlier, you learned or you experienced how to talk to people when you're trying to sell those things back in your Nokia days. And when you're talking right now, try to work with the experts, understanding that you're not the expert in everything. I think that is one skill that I would probably also tell people. You need to develop how to work with people and how to understand their motivations in order to enable them to work with you. The soft skill side. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like Sheila, as marketers, we have slightly unidimensional view of who our customers are. We always think of customers that are as our external customers. But
yes.
I feel
You forget
successful
the internal.
marketer. Yes, there are a lot of internal customers who obviously our entire goal is to serve our customers better, but it's also to serve our internal customers better. How can we make their lives better? And are we communicating that value to them? And so I feel like we need to do a lot more. We could do a better job of that, is all I feel.
Yeah, I
I
totally
could do a
agree.
better job of that.
Totally agree as well. And so now that we've talked about the soft skill parts, this is the part that I know a lot of the Tech enthusiasts will probably want to know. What tools, Garima, would you recommend for someone to help manage their portfolio and their time? Because now, if you're even on a regional basis, you are handling different geographies, different time zones. How much more for someone like you who is now handling a global role? What tools do you use?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the number of tools just keep growing.
Yes.
And if I were to list those tools, oh my God, there's so many. But so I think it depends highly on the tech stack that your company has. But for me, some of the tools that I think I use on regular basis, it would probably be Adobe Analytics for sure. And yeah, Power BI, SEMrush. I think these are three that I use on almost every other day just to make sure that I'm top of what's happening in the data world, data side of things. The other thing that I really look forward to is SFDC. So any CRM tool that you might have, which gives you a sense of how's the sales coming along. In terms of my own, and of course, there are many other tools for UTM tagging, tracking campaigns, etc., which are very company dependent. There is an asset management tool, which I think is 100% required for us to do our job better and to communicate across the divisions. One change that I've made recently, which is how do I manage my own data? So I have really gotten better with digital data storage. So I use this para method, which is projects, areas, resources, and archives. So I basically use these four folders for my OneNote, for my Notion, for emails, and for my OneDrive. So I make sure that I'm doing a really good job of digital note taking so that I'm able to classify and then find that information when I need it. So a lot of times I sometimes don't even read a report, just put it in resources. And I know that when I need it, I know where to go and find it. So that digital note taking is a game changer when it comes to doing more and more.
Wow, I'm taking notes actually, and I will be listening to our conversation again later on. So thank you for that. Last question now, as I understand that we're now running out of time. What would be your advice to somebody who aspires to one day lead a global portfolio?
One is, as a marketer, as soon as you can, and I think I waited too long, please find some side project to do. It could be hosting a podcast. It could be writing a newsletter like I write every Wednesday on Substack. So you could do that. You could do a podcast, or you could start your own TikTok, or you could help a friend set up their Instagram profile. I feel like as you move across, your ability to do things hands on, that reduces. It starts becoming more strategic. You depend on someone else to do it. And then you lose a sense of how algorithms work, how things are moving in real life. And you will learn valuable lessons when you grow something of your own. So for me, when I started writing on Substack is when I began to appreciate how difficult it is to grow a community. And the act of writing every week on marketing also helped me just stay in touch with what's happening in marketing. So find that passion project. I feel like the most interesting marketeers are marketeers who have a side project going. Second is please network. There are so many ideas that come across that you come about only when you meet others. And it doesn't have to be marketers. It has to be anyone. Go broad, be curious. So meet people, read more. And I think that networking and just being curious about what others are doing, that will help you it helps me come up with new ideas for sure. And I would say the third one and the final one I would say is diversity or experiences. So within marketing, sometimes we have to have that range. And I truly I believe that I was able to move across because I had those generalist skills and being able to get diverse experiences within marketing, outside of marketing, that helps a lot in being able to appreciate different stakeholders and where they come from and be open to experiences. For example, for me right now, me and my family, we are trying to learn Mandarin. So I have a tutor who comes in and weekly we spend 1.5 hours just learning the language and I'm not sure how good I'll get or how far I'll go, but it helps me appreciate a culture that I'm right now in Singapore and it helps me appreciate the culture here by learning that language. So diversity of experiences, network, and please go start that side hustle as soon as you can. Those are the three things I would
Well
say.
said and great advice. Thank you very much, Garima. Everybody, we've run out of time. I do hope you've learned a lot from Garima. I sure did. And stay tuned for another episode of B2B Marketing Asia podcast, where we interview experts in B2B marketing across Asia Pacific.